In case you missed it, and you probably did, because even I did, and I'm a big Glennon Doyle fan, she's had a very shitty week on the internet. This story has made me really pufferfish, and I'm going to unpack it in a very top-line way because it might seem a bit weedy and a bit petty, but at the heart of it, it's about what can happen to women when they become too successful and how other women feel about it. Now, Glennon Doyle, for those of you who aren't familiar with her, she's a hugely successful author, podcaster. She most recently wrote a fantastic book called Untamed about women breaking free from constraints in their lives. She's written also a lot of books and blogs and spoken on her podcast, We Can Do Hard Things, about her personal life and about struggles she's overcome like addiction, infidelity in her first marriage, meeting her now wife and, getting married to her, and she's her lifelong battle with an eating disorder.
She's in the same world as your Elizabeth Gilberts, your Oprahs. She's on Oprah a lot.
Yeah, she is. In fact, Oprah optioned her book, either Love Warrior or Untamed, I can't remember which one, and has turned it into a
really
thingy.
Oh, I didn't know that. A movie.
Yes, a TV series. All her books are being turned into TV series.
Fun fact.
Anyway, she has had a bad week. She was forced to quit Substack after she was essentially harassed off the platform.
Mia, tell us tell us about Substack.
I'm so glad you asked. Outlouders may have heard us referencing Substack a lot. It's basically a platform where you can write a newsletter. Anyone can sign up. Think of it like social media in a way, but for writing.
It's like what blogging used to be.
Yeah. So you can it's like a tool, really. I'm on Substack. I've always done a newsletter, but I moved my newsletter onto Substack because it's just very easy to use. The back end of it is very easy.
So Mamamia Out Loud, our newsletter.
It's also on Substack.
I have a Substack, although I always forget to write.
So the word Substack has almost become synonymous with the word newsletter. So a lot of people, small writers are on there, bigger writers are on there. You can monetize. Your sister, Claire Stevens, has got a Substack. You can monetize, so you can choose to charge people or not. It's all sort of very easy to use. Anyway, so Glennon a little while ago decided she didn't want to be on social media anymore because, like many of us, she felt that it was just all a bit toxic. It was a bit big. She was sick of being a victim to the algorithm. She also didn't like who she was when she was scrolling through social media. So her good friend Liz Gilbert, who has a Substack, convinced her to come over. And here is a video that Liz and Glennon made on Substack and sent out to their followers to where Liz was welcoming Glennon onto Substack. Here's what they had said.
I am here as Glennon Doyle's beloved friend to welcome her to the Substack because I have been trying to convince her to come to the Substack. I've been like, come over to the Substack. Come over to the Substack where the kind people are. Come over to the Substack where the literary people are. Come over to the Substack and be with us in the gentle corner of the world. And finally, it has happened that Glennon is with us on the Substack.
Nothing sounds more Gen X than the use of the Substack.
The Substack.
You've got to drop the.
But the gentle place, the
didn't
kind
go that well.
place.
It didn't go that well
Tempting
for Glennon.
fate.
So what happened was she moved to her audience or her community because she builds communities and she wanted to write again. And like many of us, she finds writing books a huge lift and very solitary. She likes the idea of something a little less restrictive and a little faster. So she moved over to Substack. She straight away got a following of over 200,000 people. She did have a paywall. I think she put everything that she was writing behind the paywall. And that's when people started to lose it. There was a woman who kicked it off by writing an open letter to Glennon Doyle saying that she was a big Glennon Doyle fan and she even published a photo of herself with Glennon where she'd been to a book signing. But she said the way you came onto the platform was too confident. You needed to be more gentle. You needed to be more humble. You needed to be more respectful. And you also shouldn't have taken followers away from some of us who are smaller. What you should have actually done was just be quiet and elevate the work of other writers on Substack.
That's so weird. Your tone changed when you were telling that part of the story.
So that started a bit of an avalanche.
I can't imagine what Mia thinks about this.
With people saying it's not fair, Glennon needs to be more humble, she's doing it wrong, how very dare you. And she was on for about 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And as I said, she gained this big following who would have followed her anywhere. And the thing about Substack is that it's kind of networked. So there's, the more followers she has, the better it is for the platform. But this sort of started a bit of a backlash and an avalanche and a pile-on, and people saying Glennon shouldn't be here and she's not doing it right and she needs to learn and listen. And so this week she sent a letter to her followers and deleted her account. She said, I'm changing course. I've left Substack and I'm returning this beautiful community here to this simple newsletter. If you became any kind of paid subscriber over there, I'm refunding every penny I received. There is nothing else you need to do. I will keep writing to you here straight in your inbox. So she just moved off the platform essentially. She said, I'm deeply sorry for the disappointment. I feel disappointed too. All I can ask is that you trust I made none of those decisions lightly, and I am doing what I believe is best for my own health and the health and protection of this community that I love so much. I finally love myself and us too much to stay in any situation that feels bad. It is okay to try a new thing and then say, actually, that didn't work. Leaving a place as soon as it feels bad, even if it's inconvenient, I think is embodiment progress. Holly.
I feel genuinely worried for Glennon Doyle, to be honest. I read that that statement and she said it felt unsafe and she said, she felt very threatened there. And I mean, I'm not as much of a Glennon stan as you, Mia, but I'm familiar with her work and I listen to We Can Do Hard Things quite often because that's really interesting. And she's incredibly open about her mental health struggles and the fact she's in recovery from this eating disorder, and she goes to meetings every day and she talks a lot about her vulnerability. And so when I read that, I felt genuinely worried for her actually, because it feels terrible to be piled on, criticized, harassed. It feels extra terrible maybe. Well, no, I was going to say if you're a vulnerable person, but actually it feels terrible for everybody, right? The thing is if I was going to put my hat on of the people who have written all those very caring open letters, I would say, and it's a massive generalization, right? Creatives are sensitive people. If you are a creative who would desperately love for your art to be your living, because let's remember, and I speak from a place of privilege on this too, that for the enormous majority of writers, it is not their living. It is a tiny, tiny percentage of creatives who actually make a living from being a creative. If that's you, it can feel like genuine pain that there are people who you don't believe are necessarily as talented or as hardworking or as worthy or as deserving or whatever, who appear to have everything, and now they also want some of what you've got, right? Now, I know that's not true. I know that Glennon being on Substack wasn't taking people from the woman who wrote that letter or anybody else.
Well, they said that she was.
But then the cold hard facts of it are is that if you're forking over money for subscriptions, which if you're following a lot of writers on Substack, that can really mount up, and you're making your choices, there is some merit to the argument that paying Glennon means you won't pay someone else. So I understand the instinct in a way of the creatives who genuinely felt their hackles rise because they were like, I thought this was a lovely little community just for us, and then here's one of the biggest dogs coming in.
Why do you think they thought it was that? It wasn't like, it's a tech platform. Substack is owned by a bunch of tech bros who are making no secret of the fact that it's a tech platform with an algorithm just like every other one.
But look at what Liz Gilbert said. That's why they think that. Liz Gilbert literally said, welcome to the kind place, the literary place, the gentle place. It's positioned that way for writers and creatives. Like, come away from the toxic soup of social media and build a community who opt in and who care about you, right? That's how it's positioned. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but I think that's why. And so the people who believe that, the reality is, as you just said, tech bros making lots of money. But the people who genuinely believe and invested in that community, I can understand why their hackles rise at Glennon entering their space. But I have to be on the record as saying that I just think this sort of hounding her off their stuff is so depressing. Jessie, don't you think?
I find it depressing too, although I read that open letter and I went, you've written the open letter to the wrong person. And I think we do this with women a lot. You've written it as an open letter to Glennon Doyle and you've meant to write an open letter to Substack because all your frustrations are with Substack. And I started by writing blogs on the internet, right? And I might get 100-page views. And it was impossible to grow. It was impossible. And I think that the frustration now is that there are a lot of creatives, there are artists, there are musicians, there are writers, there are designers, there are business owners who want to get their work out there and they want to produce stuff and not be beholden to an algorithm. And they don't want to feel as though they have to play a game like at a casino. And Substack is increasingly becoming that because every tech platform becomes that, right? So it's got new features that make it more like Twitter. It's, now you've got to make video and now you've got to, you know what? If you were getting advice from, Substack or people who understand Substack, they would probably say, write about Glennon Doyle this week because that's the conversation going off, right? And if you want to grow, and maybe this is a shameful, I can't speak for all creatives, but as someone who, started a little blog, you want to grow. You want people to read your stuff because you want to feel like it's worthy and you find, it's very satisfying to have people read your work. And I also think that in an age where we have never had more subscriptions, I am subscribing to so many streamers, and then I subscribe to media companies, and now I'm having individual creators ask me to support them.
Totally. And to be clear, that's because the whole system of media is broken and has been broken by the tech platforms.
Yes.
So it used to be that there were magazines and newspapers, and then Facebook and Google and Meta came and gobbled it all up, gobbled up all the advertising that we all used to use to survive. And that's why all the magazines closed and all the newspapers stopped printing, and everyone's struggling to survive now. And every day you hear of another media organisation going out of business. And so people are then going, all right, I'll go out and I'll build my own audience. But as you say, there's only so many individual writers that we can pay to subscribe to.
Yeah, money is finite.
Do you think that if that the money is the problem, that she's being punished for the fact that all these people were willing to pay money to read her writing and people didn't like that? Do you think that there's just this expectation that as a woman who claims to want the best for other women, therefore you should be working for free?
I think it's partially about the money. I do.
So to me, it's like, did anyone say to Joe Rogan, hey, Joe Rogan, don't come onto YouTube. You're getting enough money from Spotify.
I think that there is an irritation or a sensitivity to paywalls at the moment. I think that because it's all happened quite quickly, we got very used to getting content for free as consumers of the internet. And I do wonder if there is a sense, I don't know if it's gendered necessarily, but a sense of it is gendered. Do you have enough?
Because I agree. So I think there's that. So I think a lot of people would look at the Glennons of the world who obviously we're not her life, but by all the external measures seems to be doing fine financially and probably going, and now you want more. And there's a grist to that, to the point of whether or not we hold men to the same standard, we don't. But there are plenty of people who don't like Joe Rogan. There are plenty of people who criticize all of those guys too. It's just that there's a very particular type of female pile-on in this.
They don't criticize their right to be somewhere. They might criticize what they say. And if people are criticizing what Glennon says, that's a different thing. What they're saying is you shouldn't be here. And what Glennon herself often says is that when a man puts work into the world debates the work. When a woman puts work into the world, people debate her right to put that work into the world.
And I do think, and we talked about this a little bit with the Nagi and Brookie conversation recently, there is a real distaste and discomfort with people with big followings at the moment. I think it can be used to undermine a creator. Like almost you're not a writer, you're an influencer type
So even
thing.
though these are women who've built their own businesses.
Yes, but there is this allergy to influencer, and it's also like there isn't an acknowledgement of how hard this is a career. Glennon has worked for 15 years to grow that following. And then the whole point of that following is that she can yell at them to buy her stuff and subscribe to her newsletter.
I have a question, Mia. I'm a little bit irritated, and this is easy for me to say, that Glennon bowed to them. I'm a little bit irritated by that because the thing is that we sit here and we do this quite often where we'll talk about a pile-on and we'll go, it was terrible. But 200,000 people subscribed. Like, maybe they didn't subscribe in that minute. Maybe some of them would come with her. But there were plenty of people who want to read Glennon Doyle's work. It's not like a blanket rejection. It's some loud voices who are, as you've already pointed out, Jessie, gaming an algorithm to make their voices louder. Should the Glennons of the world be a little bit more, and again, I don't mean this is criticism, but a bit more, like a bit more, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be here and you're going to criticize me and that storm will blow over, because it will blow over, that storm. Why do you think she did decide? I mean, she said it didn't feel safe, it didn't feel good, and I've learned.
It's part of her brand,
do you think
right?
she should have lived through it?
Well, what I think is interesting is the way it has been weaponized against Glennon and also Liz Gilbert, the idea that they are building communities of women and they care about women. And so that when women come out, individual women, and, you know, a number of individual women come out and say, I don't like this, it hurts me, then they're put in a really difficult position. Remember when Liz Gilbert wrote that entire novel that was set in Russia, and it was a historical novel, and some Ukrainian people came out and said, this is upsetting to us that you are having these characters. It wasn't about the war, but they say that anything that's even mentions Russia is upsetting to us. And she pulled her entire novel. It was about to go, it was about to be released. So I can have my hat on that I'm like, I wish they wouldn't capitulate, because then the people who pushed them feel, and it's been called bullying, and I think it's an interesting idea. Can you bully someone who's really successful? Yeah, you kind of can, I think.
I read a Substack that said these people, when there's a pile-on, you feel like you're David fighting Goliath, but very quickly you become Goliath. And I think that that's a really interesting way of putting it in terms of
all the little
power
Davids
play
together are like one Goliath.
Yeah.
And I understand. I mean, imagine being because I thought the same thing, imagine being in a restaurant and you're at a table with all your friends who want to be there and you're having a lovely dinner, but all the people at the other tables in the restaurant are like, she shouldn't be here. Why is she in here? Who let her in here? We don't like her that she's here. She's doing terrible things to us. She's making our meal worse. You wouldn't want to stay.
Yeah, I worry that it gives more power to the critics, though. And that next time it's like, well, you should be doing what Glennon and Elizabeth did, and we expect women to bow down.
I also don't think anyone has a right to earn money from something that they love doing. I just don't. Like, if you're on Substack and you don't have many followers and you can't earn a living from it, don't blame Glennon Doyle. Blame Substack or blame the system or try something else. I mean, surely there's enough room for all of us.